In the sagas of the frigid north, you hear him outside the great halls, as he walks across the steppes, hiding his warped form in the dead of night, seeking to devour the flesh of man. He is both cursed, exiled, and descended from the biblical Cain. He prowls somewhere between almost human and the suggestion of something human. In an Appalachian forest, you're looking out of your tent. The pitch black of the forest betrays your safety. You're allowed nothing but the silhouettes of trees against the moonlit sky. First, you feel the creeping cold on your skin. Then the smell of decay hits you before you realize that one of the trees are swaying in the windless night. Two once human, sunken, white, desperate eyes stare at you. The emaciated corpse-like giant flares its jagged teeth and tattered lips as it reaches into the depths of your tent. In between ruins, somewhere in Greece, you're running from the scrape of scales rasping across stone. You hear the hissing screech echo throughout the ruins. Following the fretted path towards the exit, you turn a corner to find a wall. No. Someone must have cut the thread, moving your guide to freedom to certain demise. Bracing yourself, you turn around to face the serpentine, brutish, tusked figure. As she catches you, her long tongue rattles as she stretches out her tattered wings. You detect a hint of sadness in her eyes, before the petrification halts the remainder of your human faculties. These are descriptions of the creatures: Grendel from Beowulf, the Wendigo from Algonquian folklore, and lastly, the Gorgon Medusa from Greek myth. They are what could be described as grotesque. The word itself feels monstrous to me, probably a product of repeated association. The dictionary definition of the word grotesque all but confirms this feeling of a word that centers on the pained, unnatural, and deformed. It goes, as describing something that is departing markedly from the natural, the expected, or the typical, and as something that is absurdly incongruous, that is to say, non-harmonious, deformed, distorted, or unsuitable. I can't help but sometimes pity some of these creatures. Often their monstrous appearance are no fault of their own, or at least a punishment or curse that is way beyond the scale of their misdeeds. I've been playing a whole bunch of Elden Ring Nightreign these last few weeks. And by the way, sorry if you've grouped with me randomly. I've probably been looking more at bosses rather than actually fighting them. But this has given me a happy reunion with some horrifying bosses from the Dark Souls series. Such as this thing. So, seeing these monsters again, I thought it could be fun to revisit some of the more grotesque creature designs from the Dark Souls series and see if we can find some semblance of an understanding of the dark fantasy bestiary, what made them, and how they might mirror the world or narrative that they exist within. This video, however, will only be concerned with monsters from the Dark Souls series. I know other creators have already made some great deep dives into the monsters of Dark Souls' more Lovecraftian sibling, namely Bloodborne. I'll put some links in the description down below. Fair warning though, Due to the nature of some of these creatures, the video will contain topics regarding body horror and a lot of teeth. So if you're not into that, wait, that sounded weird. Well, you've been warned. Let's get to it. Come explore some monsters with me. I've had this Dark Souls art book for quite some time, and seeing these creatures again in Nightreign made me want to look back at some of the concepts found in this book. There's usually a lot of cool details to be found in some of these books that can be quite easy to overlook within the games, especially since you're often fighting for your life when you face some of these creatures. It's also a great opportunity to see if the original concepts, the emotions and themes that both creatures and environments convey have been able to be carried over into the gameplay. Wait a second. Isn't this Taurus Demon? I suppose Taurus Demon and Asylum Demon might have switched places at some point. It's also fun to find small, I suppose we can call them inconsistencies from our point of view as players. I quite like how From Software ended up using Taurus Demon on the wall in Undead Dragon instead. Oh yeah, this poor fellow. The Ceaseless Discharge. Looking a bit into the lore behind his form, he was the youngest of the children of the Witch of Islith and her only son. The Witch of Islith, who was one of the original lords, attempted to create a new first flame of her own, but instead becoming the mother of demons by creating the Flame of Chaos. Now that I think about it, Islith does sound a lot like Lilith in name, the mother of demons from the myths of old Mesopotamian and Jewish mythology. Oh well, minor tangent. In creating the Flame of Chaos, its unstable power caused the birth of the demons, of which Ceaseless Discharge was the first as he was transformed into this shape. However, even before his transformation, he seemed to be cursed with misfortune, as he was born with sores that were inflamed by the lava that flows in Islith. To ease this pain, his sisters gave him a magical ring, the Orange Charred Ring, which is the lava walking ring we end up using as players in the game to get to the Bed of Chaos. To make his luck even worse, he dropped this ring when he was transformed, meaning that he was left to feel the full agony of his transformation. To make it even worse, Miyazaki has stated in a Designworks interview that the only source of comfort in his pitiful, painful existence is the belief that they, his sisters, are watching over him. Does he even realize that the sister that he's watching over closely is already long dead? And that his half-spider demon sister Quelaag is defeated by the time that you reach him? No matter how aware he is of his circumstances, he is bound in this agonizing form, filling the chamber with lava, the condition from which his name stems. To us, he seems more like a natural force than something deserving of a name. Ceaseless Discharge. The non-ceasing discharge of lava that flows from his body, almost as if he's endlessly bleeding that, of which his life force has been turned into. Like his sisters, he has arachnid features, but malformed and mutated in demonic misery, looking more like molten tendrils than the spider legs that they were supposed to be. A lot of his form seems to be fused together and malformed, such as his left arm, which is stuck to his torso. The arm that he will, by the way, rip out of his own freaking torso and try to smash you with if you aggravate him by looting the corpse of his dead sister. Once defeated, or freed, depending on your view, you can venture further down into Lost Islith, where we find our next subject. Or rather, half of it. The next creature I want to bring up is the Undead Dragons. And actually, I'm approaching this one slightly from behind, but it made sense with Isolith. And I need a segue. These bounding demons, as they're officially called, are actually the decomposing bottoms of the once living dragons that Lord Gwyn and his following killed in the time up to the Age of Fire. They've now been brought into demon unlife by the very same flame of chaos that transformed the Ceaseless Discharge. However, what I'm a bit more interested in is the other half of this creature, which is officially called the Undead Dragon. This once majestic creature now hangs on to dear unlife at the Valley of the Drakes, typically accessed using the Master Key that you can choose as your starting gift. I think most people, although cautiously, have approached this creature thinking it was a morbid prop in the level design, only to find themselves at its desperate mercy due to the allure of the loot in front of it. What really speaks to me in its design is that although it is gross and decaying, it still has a sense of past majesty to it. It will not just let you take its treasure without a fight. It is still that much of a dragon in spite of its fall from grace. And creatures that have fallen from grace, still able to show off their past magnificence, is a theme we've seen Miyazaki use more than once. From an interview, it is also clear that From Software carefully crafts these worlds and creatures with dignity in mind. Of course, these creatures are still undead, decaying and overall gross, but it doesn't overshadow their character. As if they ask themselves, how would a once proud and majestic ruler of the world, now having lost your stone scales, beset by the decay of Gravelord Nito, and left in a world that is no longer yours to rule, how would they hang on to what little left they have? It is sorrowful, yet their time has come to an end. So let it have its last fight, and a dignified end. At least. And then we get to this thing that initially started my journey back into the bestiary of Dark Souls. You know what it reminds me of? The Spanish ripped newt. This badass amphibian can stab you with its poisoned spear-like ribs if you're not careful. Nature do be kinda metal. Oh well. Despite its ionic undertones, this toothed maw design of the gaping dragon is one seen in many places. Like leeches and lampreys, but of monstrous sizes and often cosmic horror adjacent, they are found in Dune, Warcraft, and Dungeons and Dragons, just to name a few. But the gaping dragon still seems rather unique in the Dark Souls universe from an evolutionary perspective. Like the deformed dragon, Seath the Scaleless, who will probably be in another video at some point, there seems to be a form of mutation at play. So how did this creature come about? And how does it stand in such stark contrast to the other majestic dragons in the Dark Souls universe? Though it shares the dragon name and reptilian scales, claws and draconic wings, it lacks the imposing majesty of the other dragons. Rather, the gaping dragon imposes you with a pure feeling of dread and pains you by just looking at its fleshy, wound-like appearance. As though someone ripped this creature open and, as if not cruel enough, decided to curse this creature with life beyond this mortal wound. As though this wasn't enough, it still has 4 mangled wings that seem nothing more than vestigial, as the gaping dragon seems unable to fly, though it can jump. Sorry, I had to. From the descriptions that Miyazaki and Nakamura have given earlier, it seems to not always have had this form. Due to the annihilation of most of the dragons, the surviving members went mad, and with the emergence of new life with the First Flame and the Age of Fire, it has been corrupted and mutated by its desire for gluttony, which, having a gaping maw the size of half of its body, is fitting for gluttony. It is even so gluttonous that one of its attacks consists of oozing out its thick stomach acid, as if to digest you before you even enter its infinite maw. From what I could gather, the original everlasting dragons had 4 legs and 4 wings, meaning that in its descent it has sprouted an extra pair of legs in order to support the elongated maw and body it now possesses. Its head has even devolved into a proboscis type of appendage that still has 2 vestigial fangs that betrays its past form, as can be seen in this video by Sully the Witch. This proboscis-looking appendage seems to be used to find prey, whether it is by smell, sound, vibration, or a form of electroreception like electric eels. Its eyes seem to have either completely vanished or become pin-like, and with its bent over backwards fighting stance, it's natural for it to rely on its other senses instead. In contrast to the Undead Dragon, I failed to find the once majestic creature in this toothed form. However, this contrast might even prove their true fall from grace even more, as the actual survivors who didn't become zombified versions of their former selves would regress so substantially with their madness that they would rather have perished with the rest of their kin than end up like this. Maybe it's time to end its insatiable hunger. Maybe it's not in my place to call these creatures grotesque. Don't get me wrong, they are dangerous, gluttonous, wrathful, threatening, even monstrous. But like many other monsters, there's a tragic note behind their circumstances. Whether it's an inherited cursed existence, a fall from grace and past majesty, or a desperate descent into something even worse, the circumstances surrounding their existence seems to be where we find the real grotesque, within their own existential purgatory. Going back to the definition of the word grotesque as something unsuitable, I have to ask, how is any life suited to stay congruent and harmonious under the circumstances of extreme tragedy? Like the stories of Grendel, the Wendigo, and Medusa, these monsters are, whether by curse, ancestry, or otherwise, undoubtedly tragic. The least we can do is to treat them with some semblance of dignity. Hey folks, hope you enjoyed the video. I was thinking about making this into a series where I explore creature or monster designs from different series of games that I enjoy and see if I can dig up any meaning or background behind some of these designs. If that's something you would like to see more of, please let me know in the comments down below, and I'll definitely look into whether or not this topic can become a series. Besides that, I'm super happy about the response to my first video. It's really motivating to get so nice feedback. Thank you so much for that. If you haven't seen it, I'll put it up on screen here. Else, feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this one. That's it for now, and thanks for joining me. And so long, until I find you again.